Awesome. Well, Natali, thank you so much for joining us today on the show. I am just beyond excited to have you with us. I actually heard you be interviewed by Dana over at the Boss Mom podcast over a year ago. And several of the things that you said in that podcast really actually I feel like changed the trajectory of my husband and I's, what our dreams and goals were for our family, and really impacted and helped. You had some phrases in that podcast that like wrapped words around some thoughts that I had, but I couldn't really like clarify, some mindset things, which I have like since shared with so many people over the last year. So I'm just thrilled to have you. So for our listeners joining today, Natali Morris is a former network news anchor turned personal finance educator and motivator. Her specialties include personal finance, business, and technology. Natali is currently a contributor to CNBC and MSNBC, where she was previously an anchor. Prior to that, she was on CBS Interactive. She's written for Consumer Reports, Wired, Variety Magazine, the San Francisco Examiner. She has a master's in sociology from USC, and she's from the San Francisco Bay Area. And I love this part of your bio. She lives and works with her husband, Clayton, and their 3 small children, and her sole focus is to not screw them up. So, Natali, thank you so much for joining us. Natali, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, like what you do now and what brought you to that point, like a little bit of your story.
Sure. Okay. Thank you for saying those things about my contribution on that podcast.
Yes,
Sometimes
yeah.
you say something out into the world and it is meaningful to you, but you have no idea how it lands, right?
Right,
My
right.
intention in sharing my story is to empower other women specifically, but other families to build wealth as a family. So my husband and I, we have several businesses, but really they all funnel down into one main intention, and that is to help families run their wealth building like a business. Because it doesn't matter if you're married or not, but everybody has a team that they're working with to build their career and build their wealth. And we all have this dream, right? That you can not work for somebody else, that you can put your best talents out into the world and live this life of freedom. Well, my husband and I, we sort of reverse engineered that when we got married. Is how can we make it so that we don't have to work for other people any longer? And we began to study finance. Now, this came at a kind of it was a tough time for any family, really. Like when you first have kids and you first, find yourself partnered up with somebody else, you realize we're coming to this partnership from 2 very different directions. And when our first child was born, I lost my job. And I was trying to find another one, but I was finding it very difficult to find one that fit into my motherhood as well. My husband, he worked on the weekends. And I worked weekdays, and then I lost that job. And I didn't want to take on another job that was 5 days a week when he worked the weekends. That meant that we had no free time, that we had no freedom.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, maybe I can find a weekend job or I can find something part-time, and it just never meshed. I found a part-time job at CNBC, and that was fine, but I was struggling to get more work there, get on the air a lot because I was not in the building. And then I got pregnant with our second, and I just found myself at this place where I was like, I don't have a paycheck to contribute to this family anymore. I was very proud about it. And I did not want to merge our bank accounts because, again, that just was not, it was against the way I felt about money. I felt like I didn't want to rely on him. I just wanted to have this contribution of my own money, right?
Yeah.
And that just didn't work at some point because I wasn't working full time, because the money that we were living off of had Clayton Morris on the paycheck, not Natali Morris. And it bothered me more than I thought that it would, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought, okay, I'm looking around in my suburban New Jersey neighborhood and I'm like, does everyone feel this way who's not working at the playground? Or is everybody else just like, it's fine, the money has his name on it and I pay the bills. And then we talk about how to, budget and save money and go to Target and find deals. And I didn't like it. I just felt like it didn't
Yeah.
mesh with me. And then at night I would go on Pinterest and, I was looking for things like crafts to do with egg cartons with my toddlers, like
Yeah.
everybody else. But
Right.
then there's also this media that tells me how to save money, how to spend less on your dinners, and it was all about shrinking your life because now you don't have a paycheck in your name, right?
Yeah.
He's got one, you don't. And so your job now is to shrink the life, spend less. And that's how you
Mhm.
make yourself valuable. And I hated that. I still do.
Yeah.
In fact, when I see that on Pinterest, I'm like, that's total crap because you're
Yes.
worth more than that, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you can only shrink your life so much to the point then what, right? You're saving for what? I can't really, like, I can't see that one through.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, I have two choices here. Either I can become this extreme couponing lady, right? And then my husband would be like, "That's nice, honey. You know, the budget is great. We're right on target this month." Or I could go out and find another job and and then I have a paycheck in my name, but that again was not an option for me then and there. And when I had this thought this day, I was sitting at my desk and I was sort of stalking my agent, like, "Have we heard back from Bloomberg? What did CNN say?" And he was like, "No, we haven't heard back from them." And so I said, "Okay, if I don't have a paycheck with my name on it, I'm going to make sure that I am so good at personal finance and wealth building that it is equal to a paycheck. So I'm going to take what we have now and learn to invest it and learn to find assets that we can live off of, because otherwise this is a polarized choice, right? My one choice is become extreme budgeter. My other choice is become wealth builder. You can
Yeah.
only go one or two of those ways, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't want to go the Pinterest way. So I decided, so that day, I remember when this happened, my kids were napping and I told my husband I'm going out, and I went to the South Orange Library in New Jersey and I just found a bunch of personal finance books that spoke to me. And then the next week when I had an assignment at CNBC, I went into I don't know if you've ever been in a media room, a newsroom, but
No.
people send finance books to CNBC in droves. Anyone who releases a finance book, they send it there. And most, the producers don't read it. They just like put them all on a shelf. And so you can take them. And so when I would go into work, I would take some of these free finance books that had been sent in and I would read them. And then I'd take them back and read more. And then I became very comfortable with the language of personal finance. Now, at
Wow.
the same time, I was also raised by a small business owner who always taught me to manage my finances like a business, but I had not done this for a family. So I was taking what I was learning. I was laying out our finances in spreadsheets. I knew how to make a balance sheet and a profit and loss statement. So I did that for my family. We teach other people to do this now so that they can learn where they're starting and how to build wealth. And then
Right.
we just learn to start changing the structure of our wealth building. Now, my husband at this time was really getting into real estate investing, and that became something that we also learned together. So now we not only help other people learn to create wealth as a family, we also help them learn to invest in real estate if that is what they're
Yes.
comfortable investing in. So we have, again, those two pieces. But really, the big epiphany here that I want to share with other people is that you cannot save your way to wealth. It's not possible. You have to learn to build assets. We teach you how to do that. And you have to change your mindset as someone who is like just living their life and your wealth
Yeah.
building is not a piece of your career, because it has to be. Your family is a business, whether you like it or not, right?
Yeah.
Because you want to increase assets, you want to have cash flow. There are goals of this family, whether you're on board with it or not. You have to treat your wealth building as if it is a piece of your career, because it is. And the way most of us approach our career is we're organized, we have goals, we want to learn new skills, we have to play to a team. Those are things you have to do in your wealth building, because otherwise you're just going to float along and never get to where you'd like to be.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I love that, Natalie. And I love, I came from, I love my family, but they're super frugal. And I think that idea that you cannot save your way to wealth that statement is just so huge. And the other thing,
It's shocking too. And
yeah,
it's
yeah,
upsetting, to be
it's,
honest. Like the
yeah,
first time I heard it, I was upset about it, if I'm honest, because most of us put all of our effort into saving our way to wealth. And then when you really start to parse out those numbers and realize that it's not possible, you feel duped or
yeah,
pissed. That's more accurate. I was pissed.
yeah. You're like, how has no, I had never heard someone, this is like encapsulate that idea until I heard you say it. And that you can never, you can only save so much, but the amount that you can make is infinite. So why not go that route? But for whatever reason, I don't feel like our society, yeah, we just don't train people to think like that.
Well,
So
there is a reason for that. It's because the banks make a lot of money when you think that you can save your way to wealth. There's a
yeah,
lot of marketing
wow,
for that. If you just sort of open your eyes to sit down on the weekend watching some kind of sports, right? And
right,
that you're going to see all kinds of commercials about save, save, save. And most of them are very paternalistic, right? It's like a man who's telling his wife, like, hey, we can buy that boat or
yeah,
whatever.
right,
And usually they have some kind of way to represent your nest egg where they're dragging a marker across a field or something where they're
right,
like, you need to have this and that's. But if you really think about what they're telling you is you need to have some kind of nest egg that is this finite amount, and then that's how much you need until you die. But the thing is that however big that amount is, you have to die at the end of it, or
yes,
else, right? And so they're saying you need the nest egg. And we're like my husband and I try and teach people is the nest egg is pointless. You need geese. You need to own
yeah,
the geese that
yeah,
lay eggs every month
yes,
so that you don't have to die. The
yeah,
geese has to pace
yeah,
you. That's
yeah,
it, right?
yeah,
And so what we decided to do was look at our balance sheet and say, what here lays eggs that we can use every month?
yeah,
And nothing did when we started.
oh
Literally
no,
nothing. We had a house. The house doesn't is not a performing asset.
anything, right,
We had a
right,
cow. A cow. We did not have a cow. We had a car.
yes, yeah,
It would have
yeah,
been great if we had a cow because
that,
that's a performing asset, but we didn't. Um, and so, those all we had were liabilities. We had
yeah,
no assets. And so we decided to take the things we had to work with and turn them into assets. So, a performing asset can be anything really that you're comfortable with. We were just comfortable buying real estate, but you could buy a farm, you could buy a business, you could buy a note to a bit, like anything really that
yeah,
starts it. But we're not taught to think about that. We're taught to think
no,
about the nest egg, which is so cute. It's like a cute way to think of,
yeah,
this finite pile of money that you have to die at the end of.
yeah. And I think it's interesting. I feel like we've just implemented, we have 4 kids, and we've just implemented an allowance system. And I listened to some like teachings about allowances, and most of them, encouraged you to like have the kids, if this is a family value of yours, have your kids save 10%, give 10%, and then like the rest you can spend. But this summer, my husband and I just listened to, I think it's The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by Ecker. I don't know if you've heard of that book, but
Yeah, yeah.
and anyway, it was so fantastic. And he talked about how you should be 10% of all of your income should go into investments. And I was like, why is this not being taught to
Yeah.
children? So we are teaching our children, we save 10%, we give 10%, and you invest 10%. And we're explaining like it is important to save, but like savings is not going to reach, like you're not, I almost feel like we are taught it's responsible to save and it's risky to invest. And most of us want to just be responsible. Like we want to be good rule
Right.
followers and
Yeah.
save. And the responsible thing to do, like you've said in a lot of the marketing and messaging we get, is to just save, save, save. Um, so that's great. So, Natali, you guys, I know that. So what is it that? So you guys have like, I know that your husband has a podcast now, and then do you
Hmm.
guys have a course also where you work with families, teaching
We do.
families
Yeah.
and teaching real estate? Are those two different things?
They are, because I don't want people who feel like investing in real estate is overwhelming to not think that wealth is inside of their reach. And so a
So
lot of
good.
times when someone decides, okay, I know that I need to own performing assets if I ever want to be truly free, but they don't like the idea of real estate. Well, there are other ways, right? That's
Yeah.
just our bag. And
Yeah.
so we have a course called the Financial Freedom Academy, and it is aimed at teaching families to work together to learn to build wealth. So we basically teach them to do what I did, is not go to CNBC and steal books,
Right.
but instead
Right. Right.
create a balance sheet for their family and learn what they have to work with and learn to identify liabilities in their lives and either get rid of those liabilities so that they can invest in assets, but how to flip it on its head so you are not a liability heavy family. Instead, you're an asset heavy family.
Yeah.
And then you can go live whatever it is your dream life is. So basically, we teach you to wean yourself off the day job, which is what we did slowly but surely.
Yeah.
Because I mentioned in the beginning of this podcast, when we started this, we both worked in network news in New York City. And then when my husband left, I was freelance and then I slowly stopped working. He left in 2017, his full-time job. And then the next year we decided, well, hey, why don't we move to Europe then? Because we don't have to be in New York anymore. Our families weren't there. My mom had already left the Bay Area, so I wasn't going back in that direction. So we just decided, before the kids get too old and start to protest, let's go somewhere else. And so that's why we did that, because now we live abroad. We run our business where we teach other people these skills, but we also live off of our rental income from the assets that we acquired.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that. And that is largely, I feel like, what my husband and I have done. But I'm going to go and look at your course. I wish 10 years ago we had neither of us came from entrepreneurial families. So we were just kind of like, I mean, I have a degree in business, so I also knew how to make like a balance sheet and a
Yeah.
budget for the family. But I wish we had. I feel like what you're offering is so powerful because I feel like a lot of people just don't know where to start. I mean, like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
they just don't know where to start. So, yeah.
Right.
Um,
I mean, I didn't either. So I just pulled a bunch of books down, but I merged it with what my father had taught me as a small business owner. And then I realized, oh, this is very paradigm shifting. Most people don't know how to do that. And I would try
yeah.
and talk to my friends in my, mommy groups and things like that. And they were like, no, we don't do that. We don't talk about money.
Yes.
It's not a big part of, like, what we talk about when it comes to money is budgeting, or we manage the passwords for the utility companies as moms, but we do the administrative stuff, and I don't like
Right.
that. I don't want to be an administrator in my house. I want to be a C-level executive. I
Right.
don't make
Right.
all the decisions. I make some of them. I want to be an equal partner.
Right.
My husband has different talents when it comes to wealth building, and we had to learn to play to our strengths. But what I think too often women especially are resigned to just this administrative role, and that's what we see in the media. And I reject that, because we are so much, the data is actually that women are better investors than men,
Oh, wow.
but we don't give it a shot.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I do tend to think, why do you think that is? I mean, I agree with what you're saying. Um,
I think, well, for people like me, perhaps it was because the money had his name on it, right? And so I didn't feel
uh,
comfortable making decisions, big decisions about the money with his name on the pay to line,
yeah.
and it scared me. And so I felt like, probably, Sheryl Sandberg, she always says women, they feel like they need to take the next certification course or read 5 books, or, they never say, oh yeah, I'm ready, I'm going to do it. Right. And so that's what I
Right.
had to do, is I had to read all these books before I felt like
Oh,
I could
yeah.
like make some decisions about it. Whereas my husband, he mows the lawn listening to podcasts, and then he's like, I'm going to do this thing. And then he'll
Yeah.
just right? Um, like I see him take these risks that I wouldn't have done because I don't know, like I know this is a gendered statement, but he's got more tolerance to try something new. And
Yeah.
I feel like, well, I don't know, let me see when I'm ready for that, you know.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I think it's like great what you said in a relationship to play to each other's strengths. You know, generally I think one person is going to be more apt to like take a leap of into risk or faith or whatever. And the other
Yeah,
person is like, maybe we should read 10 more books about it before we do that. Or maybe that. So,
right.
and then like really just I think this grows in a marriage, but like learning to rely on each other's strengths. Like, okay, no, it is time to jump, and like you're gonna pull me along here, or maybe it's not quite ready time. To like really embrace those strengths. So that's beautiful. That's so great that you guys have figured out that dance. Um, well, that's awesome. So let me ask you. I know that you had shared with me that you wanted to share kind of some recent hardships that you had faced in your business and how you guys were equipped to survive a hard time, even when you didn't know that it was coming. Because I do
Yeah.
feel like, yeah, I thought that was interesting that you said that because I feel like people should be prepared that there's going to be highs and lows in life in all areas of life. And so, yeah, share with us your story about that.
Okay, yeah. So I'm working on a book that should we self-publish our books, so it comes out when I say it does.
Yeah.
We have another book called How to Pay Off Your Mortgage in 5 Years or Less, and it goes along with the idea of making sure you're not a slave to your liabilities. But after my husband had quit his job and we had come up with this plan to leave New Jersey, we had a partner in one of our businesses that we realized we had been referring investors to this person, and he had been misappropriating some of their money. Some of these investments they had made in real estate with him, and he had represented to us that he had rehabbed their homes, and he hadn't, and we had no way to know that. And so it brought upon this big hardship for us, because a lot of these investors didn't understand that it wasn't specifically my husband, and they had used, and you know, a lot of them were rightly so. They were upset about it, and so we found ourselves in this big legal battle that we did not see coming. But in hindsight, I realized that all of my preparation for building our estate, all of the things that I had done when we had taught ourselves about finance, we were willing to learn something new every bit of the way. Even when we got to what we call our freedom number, we teach people to reverse engineer how much do you need in passive income that you can quit your day job.
Yeah.
And so when we had hit our freedom number, we kept learning, we kept picking up these clues so that when it came time to fight these battles that we didn't know we were going to have to fight, we realized we had been prepping for this all along, but we just
Wow.
didn't know it. We had
Wow.
found the right lawyer. We had set up our estate in a way we didn't have to do that the way we
Right.
set up our estate. We just were like, well, this is the next thing. We'll learn it. And so I came to realize that life will prepare you for these things, and most people don't pick up the clues. And so my book is all about how to recognize and pick up the power ups in your life. If you've ever played any kind of video game, like if you played any Super Mario Brothers.
Yes.
Okay.
It's been a
So,
while.
well, and thankfully Mario continues to release titles, right? But they
Yes. Yeah.
started 1985. But the basic premise of any Mario Brothers game is that you go along and you're going to save a princess at some point, right? But as you go along the game, there are offerings for you, like a mushroom to make you twice the size, or a coin to give you an extra life, or a flower to give you the ability to spit fire. And you are supposed to pick these things up to make yourself stronger because you're heading into some kind of soul challenge, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Life is like that too. And I didn't know that until we went through this. In fact, even just this move to Europe, it ended up being at a time which was really lucky for us because this got pretty scary, this legal battle that we were in, like very personal. People showed
Yeah.
up at our house. People threatened my husband physically. It was, we had the press stalking out our house, that things that we didn't think would ever happen. But we had picked up these clues along the way that made us safe with, again, estate planning, insurance planning, things that we just kept teaching ourselves. And I realized in hindsight, if we had walked over those power ups, if we had not collected the mushrooms or the coins, if we had not done that, we would be so screwed, for lack of a better term. But we're not, right? We're doing all right. It's been hard emotionally. We had also prepped for this spiritually with the ways that we had like changed our paradigm about how we believe in our own power. We had broken down our egos enough to leave the news, so we didn't need that kind of recognition. And I realized, man, we really were set up for this. And so what I want to present to you, gentle listener, is that the universe is doing that for you too, in its own unique way. And your power-ups could be just listening to this podcast and me recommending a book or a course or some writing that we do, or a podcast, right? You can seek that stuff out and power yourself up, or you cannot. And you'll probably be fine, right? Most people won't come across a soul challenge that's this big, hopefully. But it could be, you're powered up, like someone mentions nutrition plan that you should take up, and then you're healthier, right? Someone mentioned something, there's always every day some kind of power up if you open your mind to them and just make sure that you're not stepping over them. And then, that is really the key to survival and success. I believe this wholeheartedly. So, if you follow me on social media, I'll tell you when my book is done. It's not quite there yet, but this is my main message. This is what I want people to open themselves up to, because even me telling you, you can be better at personal finance, this is a power up, right? And so please open your eyes to them, because you are being prepared for whatever challenges will come your way, whether you know it or not.
Gosh, that there's like so much goodness in what you just said. I totally agree. I do think, like, whether you call it God or the universe or whatever, like, I think you are being prepared for everything that is coming your way. And yes, when you hear something in a podcast, or you just feel like a little nudge in your spirit, like, consider yourself tapped. Like, oh, this is being brought to my attention for a reason, like, stuff happens for a reason. And just being a lifelong learner it's always going to have payoffs. Like, you never know. I think about 4 years ago, one of my children, when she was 2, she had a near drowning and almost died, and
oh my
she
gosh,
should have died. And I just think, like, I felt like everything up to my husband and I's life to endure that experience and have faith that she would live and not have brain damage, which she didn't. We were just like like, we had gone through hard things in our life and our marriage prior to that. And if we hadn't like just daily done stuff to invest in ourselves, then when you have a big storm like you and your husband are weathering right now, you just like, you get knocked out, you gotta be prepared. So I love that. And what is the name of the new book that's coming out?
It's called Power Ups.
Power ups. And I love the analogy too. That I think that's a really great way for us
it's all about
to
video.
remember
I
it.
used to be a tech reporter, so like, most people can relate to the virtual world of any kind of a video game, but power ups are in every game, that in some form or fashion. Like, if you played Angry Birds, it's the potion. If you there's always some kind of power ups in a virtual space. And life is more like a virtual space than we really give it credit for, than we tend to see. And I think that if you start to think this way, it's a very empowering way. Just sort of look around and say, okay, there's more support here for me than I tend to think. It's just up to me to play the game a little bit better,
To like get in the game and just, I love that. That's fantastic. And I wanted to see, Natali, if you could talk a little bit. Most of my listeners are moms, and just maybe talk about anything regarding mom, like I don't know. I kind of have a message that sometimes you enter different seasons of your life and your desires change. And I don't know if you have experienced that, like before you had kids, what you thought you were going to want out of life and out of your career and finances. And then you had a kid, or maybe it's now you have three children and your oldest is 9. Is that right?
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
youngest is 3.
Yeah. So, and then I don't know if things have changed over the last 9 years, or um, I would just love for you to talk about how you have navigated like any maternal, that sounds so 1950s, but like motherly desires and if they've changed and how you have balanced that with also a desire to make money. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Um, I always thought that my biggest soul challenge before this started to happen to us with my husband and I's business would be just finding my way between being a mom and my career ambitions. I found that really painful to not be able to fulfill my own dreams and, feel like motherhood was the reason that I couldn't do it. And it made me feel so guilty for thinking about my kids as something that held me back.
Yeah.
And I did not know how to value myself
Yeah.
otherwise. And to be honest, a couple of things helped me to overcome that. One, we had 2 kids. My husband started to say, "Oh, I think there's a third one in us." And it upset me actually when he was asking for more because I felt like he didn't realize how hard it was for me. Like, how dare you ask me for that? Your career's going along just fine. It's me that gives up.
Poor
It's
thing.
just it's me that, and I'm a miserable pregnant person. I throw up for 14 weeks. All time, each time.
Oh gosh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you better at it? You had 4, so you must like it.
Yeah, yeah, we have really, yeah, I probably shouldn't say anything. I have really excellent. We would not have had 4 if I was like over the toilet for 14 weeks
Really?
straight. Yeah, I don't think so. No, I'm pretty, yeah, easy, very
Do you have
easy.
easy births too?
No, that's why. I mean, we've thought about having a fifth, but I'm like, we're really committed to all natural childbirth, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh. I also was diagnosed after 9 months after having my fourth with a prolapsed uterine bladder. I actually just released a episode
Oh.
or today. And today's episode is about that. Um, so, which basically from having 4 kids, my pelvic floor muscles are gone. So now
Oh
I'm
my.
like, and it took 9 months for a doctor to finally figure out that was the issue. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't want to ever have another kid, but maybe anyway.
You
Um,
never know, but
yeah, but I
yeah, I
feel
have
you.
this theory
Yeah,
that like the pregnancy gods are fair. Like either you're sick during your pregnancies and then you have easy labors, or
yes,
you have you have easy pregnancies and awful labors
I
because
would
it's
agree
got to
with
be
that.
like it's
Yes,
got to be
yes,
fair.
yes,
That's the only
yes,
way.
yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
actually pretty good at labor. I have pretty easy labors,
Oh,
but
good.
awful pregnancies.
Oh,
So yeah, that's the only way. So
yes.
anyway, when when my husband was asking me for this third, I was really upset about it. So I booked an appointment with our marriage counselor. And I thought for sure she was going to take my side and say to him, like, you can't ask her for this. So I was kind of like, you better tell it to the judge.
Yeah, yeah.
And she didn't. And she made us do this exercise where she said to him, write down what you think your life would be like if you didn't have this third baby. And then she said to me, you go home and write down what you think you would need to survive it. And why you think that and what you think like it would cost you basically to do this. And so I wrote down all of these things like motherhood holds me back, or I wouldn't be able to have my career, or, I would just put everything else on hold and it takes from me, and I was in a field that was dependent on my youthfulness,
Yeah.
and it cost me. And I looked at that paper and I was horrified. I was like, I think this of my babies. They're like the best thing that ever could happen to me. But why do I subconsciously feel this? And
Yeah.
so I felt like I can't not have a baby because I think that they're these like soul-sucking monsters. Like,
Yes.
that's, and so I felt like I needed to face that fear. So I was like, well, I want to do it then because I don't want to say I didn't do it because I was afraid. And he
Yeah.
was right. This little soul was calling to us. She's great. I can't imagine my life without her. And so I really realized I think of motherhood as this thing that holds me back when really
Yeah.
it's my superpower.
Yeah.
It makes me like this super organized, motivated person more so than I was before. And, especially like if you can have 3 kids, I'm always impressed with myself for having 3. I'm super
Yes.
impressed with you for having 4.
Oh, thank you.
I'm like, people don't. Like, you don't know what someone can do until they've got a big brood of kids and
Yeah.
professional goals. But it also helped that I was able to design my career around the fact that I want this family to be a successful business. And so we designed it around having this big family, right? How can
Yeah.
we reverse engineer what we need to support these kids in this lifestyle? And, and it's been an important piece of it, not this thing that held me back. But I
Yeah.
had to change the way I saw it.
Yeah. I think that's so good, Natalie. And our family is similar. I think we kind of early on knew that we wanted at least 3, and we were like, well, if we're going to do that, like, how are we going to afford that and
Yeah.
not, you know? So I think that's so good. Then you do have to really look at life a little bit differently. Um, I I have to share with you this one story. We rent out. We used to live in DC. We rent out our home in DC, so that's our rental property. But we also rent out homes in our house. This is one way that we've created like income for our family. So at one time in our house in Virginia, we had 3 renters. We had 3 different renters in our house, and one of our neighbors was complaining, and another neighbor, friend of mine, said to me, well, and I also have a small preschool in my house. Anyway, so another neighbor girlfriend of mine said to me, well, she was like, well, Joy, it is kind of a lot that you're doing with your house. And she was like, the rest of us have jobs. And I was like, I just had
Well,
I just had my 4th baby. So I was like,
yeah.
what? Let me not go like totally sleep deprivation crazy. But I was like, the
Yeah.
rest of you, what? The rest of us have jobs. Well, you chose to have jobs,
Right.
and my husband and I have chose to have renters for the last 10 years of our marriage so we can, have multiple kids and not be broke. So, but I
But
think it is
owning a
such
property is also a job.
I know,
Like,
and I was like, money just doesn't fall from the trees. Like this all takes work. Like it was a lot of work to renovate our house, and it's work
right.
to maintain properties and find, tenants and whatnot. But
Yeah.
I just had to be so grateful that my husband and I shifted our paradigm many, many years ago to being like, no, we could be like most people and just get a job, but that's not the life that we want. We want a
Right.
different life, and so we're going to do different things. Um,
But what
yeah,
she said to you, well, kind of rude, but sorry to say that about your friend.
right.
But she was presenting to you the options we all have, right? She's
Yes,
saying, I choose to not take a risk, but instead work for somebody else. Whereas your choices are a bit riskier, but
yeah,
they're yours and your life is yours. And in fact, the other day I was crying to my dad about something with our legal bills and, legal problems. And he was like, well, look, when you're an entrepreneur, the risks are higher and the
yeah,
rewards are higher. He's
yeah,
like, you make more money because, the rewards are always higher, but the risks are higher and they're more personal. And not everyone can take that. Some
yeah,
people just want a paycheck and they leave it there and they go home at night and there's no business is personal, right? It's
yeah,
not like
yeah.
that.
That's good. Yeah,
But we have made this choice. And
yeah,
so we have to live with the choice of the fact that like when the problems are there, it's ours.
Right.
But when the rewards are there, that's ours too,
Yeah.
and the life
Yeah.
is yours and the
Yeah.
schedule is yours. And so, yeah, and I think that it's important that to be honest, I don't think I would have been one of those people who would have made these choices,
Yeah.
but the choices were made for me. I was kicked out of that paycheck job, right? I
Yeah.
had my own
Yeah.
Me Too moment that I couldn't stay there.
Yeah.
Um, and so that wasn't, it was made for me, but it pushed me into a place where I was always supposed to be.
Right. Yeah. And then you did make, then you did make some choices. You chose not to become that like coupon clipping mom,
Yeah.
which I was for a few years, and I
Makes
was
you crazy. It's not to
yeah.
say I didn't do it, but I
I was
was
like,
like,
oh
I
my
did it for a
god,
little bit and I was like, screw this. This is
yeah.
not,
No, I'm
I'm
yeah.
worth big, not small, right? I
Yes.
I
Yeah.
knew at least
Yeah.
that much about myself.
Yes. Yeah. And I wanted to go back to also what you said about just like being able to admit to yourself that you had that thought. Like when you said that in that earlier podcast, like I think I actually started crying because I was like, that's the first time I had heard a woman say, I don't know, like I had been having thoughts like, why did I even have all these kids if I feel like they're just holding me back? And then you feel so guilty for feeling that and just knowing that like it first you just have to admit that that's a feeling and that's valid. And other women feel that way too, like other women struggle through that. And so it's just encouraging for me to hear another successful woman and mom like say that out loud and
Yeah.
then say how she worked through that. And I think often we think it has to be either or. Like we think like either I have to be a phenomenal mom or I have to be a phenomenal like entrepreneur. But can we figure out a way, which I think in our generation, like there's so many more options than there ever have, that we can be both. Like, can we design a life? My whole thing is a brilliant life. Can we design a brilliant life where we can be a mom and we can pursue these dreams and, create passive income from them? So I just love that you admitted that to yourself and then you were like, how can we do both? Like, how can we make this work?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So
thank you for saying that. That's nice.
yeah, yeah. Um, well, I think that is all the questions that I had for you. Natalie, was there anything else that you wanted to add?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a lot out there. Like I said, that I think that my career is built on, I used to think it was just being this like cute lady on TV, who shared technology news with other people.
Yeah.
And then now I realize that all the ways that I've been pushed to share what was hard for me is to push it forward, like
Yeah.
this identity crisis that pushed me into being this wealth building, I don't want to say expert, but like motivator, right? I want
Yes.
to call
Yeah.
myself, I'm a wealth building motivator or
Yeah.
personal finance empowerer. That sounds
Yeah.
awful, but
Yeah.
and then this awful thing that my husband and I went through pushes me to now write this book, as I'm someone who says you're being prepared to win, right? Even when you feel like you're losing. And so I just want to encourage anyone out there that when it seems like you're being pushed out of something that's comfortable, usually it's for a reason. And so the products that we have out there, my husband and I, the Financial Freedom Academy or the book about how to pay off your mortgage or the next book, are us sharing our pain points to
Yeah.
help someone else move through theirs.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. And I appreciate other people who do the same because
Yeah.
it means everything to me to hear people who have come through something and gained knowledge and wisdom through
Yeah.
it. So I appreciate you
100%.
giving me the space to share what I have to share. And I
Yeah.
appreciate everyone else who shares as well.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, I at the end of my episodes, I have what's called a final five. So, I'm going to run through those. What is one of your favorite books and why?
The Alchemist is one of my
Oh,
favorite books. Yeah.
awesome.
And that's something I read every few years just to
Oh,
remind me that when you feel like you don't have power, there's a bigger plan in place for you.
Yeah, that's so good. Okay. And what podcast are you listening to and why?
Okay, my most recent one I really like a podcast called Intuitive Astrology. I don't know if you're into astrology at all,
Oh,
but
no.
the astrologist's name is Molly McCord, and she gives you this weekly reading of the energies in the sky at any given week, plus some like healing and empowerment themes. And I think she's brilliant.
Wow.
I only just came upon it as someone sent it to me, and yeah, I just really think that there is, your astrology is like your personal energy stamp that you
Yeah.
brought into this world and you can use it. And so, yeah, that's a hobby of mine, though. I
So
don't have any
cool.
way to
Yeah.
teach it, or it's
Yeah.
just something I like to do.
Yeah. No, and isn't that awesome that there's a podcast for it, like anything? And I love what you
Yes.
said, like I actually believe that we in our generation almost have a moral obligation to share in some way, some public platform, the struggles that we've walked through and help people, not have to struggle as much as we have from what we've learned.
Yeah.
So this astrology thing, like she's just taking what she knows and sharing it, serving people all
Yeah.
around the world with it. So that's awesome. What is the best business advice that you have ever heard?
Okay. This was from Jim Rohn. My father my parents actually really loved Jim Rohn.
Okay.
He was a motivator back in the like 70s and 80s,
Yeah. Yeah.
and into the 90s as well. And one thing that I always think of when I think of Jim Rohn, or when I'm going, like when something's presented to me and I'm like, I don't want to do that. I think of his voice in the back of my head that says, "What's easy to do is easy not to do," and those are the choices that we have, right? So you can read this book about estate planning. It's easier not to, right? But it's not that hard to just do that little thing. Teach yourself one little thing at a time.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'm like, okay, it's probably not that hard. It's easy to pick up the book and just read it. Send an email to that person, reach out to somebody, listen to that podcast, whatever, read the book,
Yeah.
and so, of course, your life is easy to just not do it, but in the end, you'll be better for it when you just take these small little easy steps.
Wow. That's so good. So it's easy. The things that are easy to do are easy not to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Love that. Okay. Well, okay. I feel like I might already know the answer to this, but if you could live anywhere in the world, where would you live?
Yeah, we made that happen deliberately.
I
Yeah.
love it. Yes. Yeah.
But my husband and I, we just, we started researching where tax-friendly places to live. And we came up and we
You
had
found the
already,
spot. Yeah.
yeah, we had already traveled to Portugal and we were like, we love it there. And we have all of these reasons. Portugal is the third safest country in the world. The cuisine is very healthy. And you wouldn't believe the things they feed my kids in school.
Wow.
It's crazy. Like they're like, we had fish and rice and salad today. And I'm like, they would never do that in America. Parents would revolt. And here they don't abide your
Mortifying. Yeah.
pickiness. They're like,
Yeah.
eat it. It's not take it or leave it. It's take it. It's a healthy
Yeah.
food. You eat it. And I'm that mom. I do not abide pickiness. I don't have patience for it. So I don't have picky kids.
Right.
And that this kind of thing was important to me. These are my values, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, also the wine here is like €3 per bottle. It's amazing. It's a beautiful place. So we made it happen on purpose. So yeah,
Wow.
come to Portugal. I'm like Portugal's biggest fan.
Yeah, I'm gonna come visit. I've never been to Spain or Portugal or yeah. Well, that's awesome. Okay, so and then my last question is, where do you want to be, and what do you want to be doing 5 years from now?
I would like to take my book on the speaking circuit. That's my big goal. I used to think that I wanted another broadcast show. I don't,
Okay.
mostly because I'm too lazy for that now. I wouldn't be good, like going back into a makeup chair every day at 4 a.m. I don't want to do that. But yeah, I would like to take my book on some kind of speaking tour and just have a more robust speaking career, because that lends itself really well to the mom life,
Yeah.
because you do a speech, You get to go somewhere alone
Mm-hmm.
and have breakfast alone, which to me is a dream, but just to do it every now and again. I love to have
Yes.
breakfast with my kids, but then I like to, get on an airplane, go somewhere, be
Mm-hmm.
alone, connect with adults, and then come back. I really enjoy that. So that's my next goal. I would like to either build out some kind of speakers bureau for other women to do what I do,
Mm-hmm.
or just I'll start as a one-man band. But yeah, I would
Yeah.
really. That's my next big dream, my goal.
I love that. Yeah. And I think that would be fantastic. You'd be so good at it. Um,
Thanks.
and like what you said, everything in your life has kind of led up to, that creating that type of an opportunity. So fun. Okay. So Natalie, where can our listeners connect with you more?
So my website is nataliemorris.com, and the book right now that's out is How to Pay Off Your Mortgage in 5 Years or Less. It's a short book, but it really will empower anyone who has a mortgage, because that's a good place to start. If you want to empower yourself about your finances, start to get rid of that humongous liability. That's the
Yeah.
thing that keeps people underwater for so long. Um, And then the course is Financial Freedom Academy, and it's just
Okay.
financialfreedomacademy.com.
Okay.
And if you'd like to learn how to be a real estate investor, you can go to morrisinvest.com, or you can listen to our podcast. It's called Investing in Real Estate with Clayton Morris, because it's more his show than mine.
Yeah.
Um, and then our YouTube channel is also Morris Invest as well. And there we teach you everything about real estate investing and how to do it smart and make sure it's a great tax shelter for you as well.
Yeah. Love it. Wow. Natalie, well, I just want to thank you again.